we were pissing neon green every day.
The big ball of heat in the sky was too much.
I thought there was a bear.
Reality goes, yeah, fresco. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, everybody. What's up, everybody?
Welcome to
Welcome to
StouryTime.
StouryTime.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to StouryTime with John and Friends. I'm your host, John. Today, we have a special episode for you. I'm joined by my new friend and singer of the band, The Undertaking, Austin Visser. Austin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me on, John. I'm stoked to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
Dude, where do I even start? Tell you about me. I'm a 36-year-old musician with 3 kids. I don't even know if I'm a musician. I yell in our band. So I'm a 36-year-old dad who decided to get back into rock and roll as my quarter life crisis. And yeah, we're from San Diego. We used to play together in high school, got back together a couple years, got side railed by a pandemic. But yeah, kind of just making the best of being in our late 30s and having fun playing music. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you do anything else for work as far as when you're not on the road?
Yeah. I co-own a construction company with my dad. So I'm actually a 4th generation. Visser Construction is our company. I'm 4th generation. So my great grandfather started it in Iowa area when they immigrated from Holland, and then they ended up here in San Diego. So I did that for a couple of years. I dipped out of construction for a bit, and then I'm kind of always back and forth. So
I respect that. I'm an electrician, so I work in construction as well. So
yeah. We're a
cool.
general contractor, so we'll build you a house, we'll do a kitchen remodel, we'll work on a big commercial building. Kind of do anything and everything, which is how we prefer it, to be honest.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. So how's your day going? Anything big happen today?
Dude, my day's going great. I'm like stressed right now. We're a big Padre. We love the Padres. So baseball for us starts. Man, I hate to date the podcast. So you're talking whenever this was released, the Padres are in Korea starting the season right now with the Dodgers. So I'm trying to figure out if tonight at midnight for us in San Diego, do I start binge watching the new X-Men cartoon on Disney Plus and then just stay up till 3 a.m. and watch the Padre game? Like I'm stressed because I'm considering just not sleeping tonight.
I feel that. And the answer is yes, you do that.
I know, because what happens is I'm going to wake up, like one of my kids is going to wake me up at like 2 a.m. and I'm going to be like, well, I guess I'm done for the night. So I'm going to just stay up and watch the Padres. So in San Diego, like East Coast, if the game will start at 6 a.m. for you guys, and for us it's 3 a.m., which sucks because it's 2 West Coast teams.
How old are your kids?
Playing in Korea. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. They're 9, 7, and 3. So I'm having a bit of an existential crisis because my oldest in May will turn 10.
Oh wow, double digits.
You start to like quantify parenting as like 10 years ago he was born, and you're like, I don't feel like that much time has gone past.
Yeah, I just had a kid in the end of July, so she's almost 8 months now.
Yep.
And
you guys surviving?
Yeah, absolutely. I had real quick. I did have I had a spinal surgery in November, so I'm like still not working, which is great because I'm able to get that extra time with her. That one-on-one time with her when her mom's at work and everything. So it's awesome. I can't complain. It's pretty great.
I love that. Well, that's the thing too. Like at some point, 10 years fly by and you're like, dude, where's my baby? Like he's now almost a teenager, and it just goes so quickly, which is like the worst cliche in terms of parenting. Cause at some point I just like, can't wait till my kids move out of my house and I'm like an empty nester. Like, please, for the love of God, get out of here. But
that's awesome. No, that's great.
Yep.
So you guys have a full length out called Funeral Psalms, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are on Solid State, correct?
Yeah, we are technically not anymore. So that was a 1-album contract. That we put out kind of in the midst of the pandemic. Really weird circumstances to that release, but a huge dream come true. So yeah, that album turns 3 years old this April. So in a couple weeks, it turns 3 years old.
Congrats on that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, it seems like it was just yesterday, but that's like time is weird post-pandemic. You're like, wait, that was 3 years ago. What the heck?
Yeah, that's crazy. And then you guys you just released like they're like video game-esque 64-bit, 8-bit sounding songs or singles.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the mindset with that? What came about with that?
Well, so we released Funeral Psalms in 2021, and then we put out an EP called Superstitions in 2023. The beginning of that, we put out 4 songs. So about a year ago is when that released. And then we had recorded, Johnny, our guitarist, made 2 of the lo-fi one and the 64-bit one that's inspired by 007 from the N64.
Yep.
And Brent, our drummer, is an EDM producer. So he, at some point, just kind of remixed one of our songs and made it kind of a pop revision or reimagining of a song. And so at some point late last year, we had just gotten back from a tour up in the Pacific Northwest. And we've had these songs for years. I've used them in like the background of YouTube videos or reels that, you know, have either been like archived or that are out there. So it's like not the first time that people have heard them. And we're just sitting there thinking like, okay, we're writing music right now. So we're like, what can we do to kind of just pepper in some music and get the Spotify algorithm, like give it something to eat. And so we just kind of drip those out. We released 2 at the end of 2023, and we just released the James Bond one. And for us, as musicians, it's kind of a fun project to say, okay, here's this chaotic metalcore, hardcore song. Like, what can we do with it to make it different? And so we made one of them a proper lo-fi that's got like the rain in the background and stuff. And then, the one we just released the other day was inspired by the James Bond soundtrack from GoldenEye. But then it's a fun exercise for me as a vocalist because the titles of those songs all were, I have a note on my phone of all the different song titles that I'm thinking of. And these song titles for the 3 songs that we just put out are ones that were kind of abandoned for like real Undertaking songs.
Okay.
And I was like, well, shoot, I still like this idea. So I'm just going to put it on this reimagining song. Like, it's not like this big release. There's not like music videos and like a crazy like hype behind it. But for like, I don't know, for I guess our hardcore like true fans, they're like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's something different. And I don't know for us, it's more of like, hey, let's do this thing. Why not? Nobody's stopping us from doing it unless we get a cease and desist for some reason, but we shouldn't. So, I mean,
that's awesome. That's very cool. And as a video game nerd, that's pretty cool. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. No, I know. So Johnny even put in like into one of the breakdown parts, he put in like the 007 theme song.
Love that. Yeah.
Like,
that's amazing.
Just little flourishes.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So we'll probably do like a singer-songwriter, like acoustic version of a song at some point. Like, I'm not a huge fan of remixes, but for us, it's kind of one of those things of like, hey, why not? Let's just have some fun and do it.
Right. Yeah. So that's amazing. I would love to do something like that. It's just, where do you find the time, you know?
Yeah, no, for reals. I mean, that's the thing that always slows us down.
Right. Yeah. So who are your guys' main influences?
Yeah. Well, so we're mid-30s, so all of our influences were those like early 2000s hardcore bands. And so for us, again, dream come true for us to be able to be with Solid State for the one album that we did, because we grew up in like Brent, Keith, and I. So one of our guitarists, our drummer, and myself went to junior high and high school together. We went to a small Christian high school. Okay. And so like Face Down Records, Solid State Records were like the end all be all for us at the time. And so you had bands like all the Face Down ones, but then with Solid State, you had Norma Jean, Under Oath, He Is Legend. And then we obviously got into Ferret and Trust Kill. So that was like the golden era of Every Time I Die, Converge, Dillinger Escape. Like, exactly. I did.
I'm from Buffalo, so yeah.
Yes.
Hometown homies.
So we'd been listening to those guys for years, and truth be told, we were a band in 2003, 4, 5. We went to college, so we kind of broke up. We'd get back together. people would come back into town, so we'd like write some music and play a couple shows. But the Undertaking never became like a thing that was like, all right, we're gonna really focus on this and put music out and play shows out of town until like it was the last Warp Tour in 2018, I think is when that ended. And so that was the summer that all these pictures are going around. And there's like a flurry of texts from Keith and Brent and I of like, we need to play music again. Like, why aren't we doing this? And one of the reasons why Every Time I Die was on that tour. And so there was just like all these amazing pictures that you're just like, frick, like, why aren't we doing this? Like, let's do something. And so that's what created the rebirth of the Undertaking, I guess. But yeah, so huge influences for us are Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, The Chariot, Dillinger, and then we're inspired by like a ton of different stuff. So you have like singer-songwriter or pop music that kind of finds its way in to little aspects of our thing. But for the most part, it's like almost as if Every Time I Die, The Chariot, and Norma Jean had a baby. Like that's what we kind of shoot for.
Yeah, I definitely get that vibe when listening.
Yeah.
I definitely get that vibe. It's crazy too. Like you said, like Solid State. I'm not much younger than you. In high school, that was like my jam. You know, they had Showbread and Haste the Day and all those bands too. So I was like heavily influenced, especially because I did grow up in the church as well.
Yep.
My brother was a pastor. I don't know. It's a thing. Yeah, but that's crazy that you kind of just like got to the place that I'm sure when you guys were young were like, that would be the thing. That would be the one, you know?
Well, you know, what's disappointing about it is so Funeral Psalms came out in April 2021, like in the middle of the pandemic. And we're always like, dude, if we came out in 2003, like we would have been like 18 years old. We could have toured nonstop. Yeah. Like we could have like fully gone for it. And so we're always like, dang it. Like we're a band like out of time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. That's as another person, musician in their 30s, like I did it for 8 years and I just have no desire to do it anymore because I'm like, I don't want to sleep in a van anymore. I don't, it's the grind. Yeah. I'm not here for it anymore. So I have a lot of respect for you doing it in your 30s.
Well, thank you. With young kids, like we're not on the road that often. And so we kind of pick and choose when we go out. So it makes it so that it works with our families and works with everybody's schedules. And we're trying not to like road dog it too much, but we try to protect our backs at this point in time.
I feel that. I wish I did that sooner. What was your first tour like?
Dude, it was phenomenal. So the timing of Funeral Psalms in theory couldn't have been worse because when we released the album, like I said, it was April 2021 and we couldn't play any shows. And for us as a very visceral, like live band, we are try to embody a little bit of the Chariot, just kind of always moving, getting the crowd involved. I try to get people on stage, like whatever cliche you want to say about hardcore and making people get involved, whatever. We couldn't do any of that. And so we're releasing these songs that are meant to be seen and felt in a live environment. You couldn't do that. And so our first run was a West Coast run from San Diego all the way up to like Spokane and Portland and Seattle all the way back down. And we did that with some of our buddies in Fallstar and Lightworker. And it was like one of those things of like, none of us had ever done it before. And here we are 35, 36, whenever that was, 34, 35, like touring for the first time. It was just a huge adventure. And we learned like a ton of lessons from that because we drove to like the cities. We tried to cover too much ground in too little time because we're all trying to fit this tour into a week so people could get back to their jobs and all that kind of stuff. And we ended up doing like an overnighter from San Jose up to Spokane. And like in hindsight, like you're just like, dude, that was awesome. But in the moment, you're like, dude, we got 16 hours to cover like from half of the middle of California all the way up to Spokane. Like in theory it doesn't really make sense, but now in hindsight you're like, oh man, that was the best. Like we're out on the road with our friends and getting to see like new cities and experience new things. So
it's
that was
part of the adventure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it all comes down to. So much of our story comes around to us pinging between having fun and then taking everything too seriously and trying to like get to the next level.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we like try to get to the next level, we stop having fun and then we're like all frustrated with each other. And so there's a balance between like, hey, when we're on tour, like let's tour with our friends and let's have a big adventure together. And so we had borrowed the Dead American. I don't know if you're familiar with Dead American, but it's Cove from Seosin. It's his band from here. So we borrowed their van. We had our trailer and hop on the road for a little bit. And you're just like, all right, can we do this? Can we actually do this in our mid-30s? And we did. And it feels cool, you know?
That's awesome. That
so much of what our band is like us testing out, like, can we do this? Is this possible?
Right.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's go for it.
It's kind of the smart way to do it too, especially because like I did it at such a young age that it was like, no, I'm just doing it. And I would like I'd leave with nothing, you know? I'd pay my rent, I'd pay my cell phone bill, and then I'd be gone for 30 days. And like it was, oh, you get $5. Okay. Am I going to use it on food or beer? You know what I mean? It's that, one or the other. If are they giving us free beer tokens at the venue or not? Yeah. That's funny. So let's hear some of these stories you got, man.
Where do you want to start?
Using COVID to start your journey.
Yeah, well, if we rewind a little bit, so it was like 2018. When we kind of started to get together, in 2019 was the first time that we started playing shows. So we only got 1 year of playing local shows. And we had a local show here in San Diego planned with Red Jumpsuit Apparatus at Brick by Brick, one of like the cooler venues in town. And it was in March of 2020, and we're starting to promote it, selling pre-sales, like all this stuff, super hyped. And then all of a sudden, bang, like COVID hits, everything starts to shut down, and we're like, all right, frick, like, what do we do? And it was one of those things where our bubble was pretty small. So we all live within like 10, 15 minutes of each other. So we were able to kind of still see each other safely and making sure we're doing everything right. But we ended up recording a single all at our own homes and sending it off to mix. And that song is what got the attention of Solid State.
Okay.
So before we were about to put it out, our manager, Joey, sent our information around to different people, and Solid State got a hold of us. And so the reason I say COVID allowed us to do this is we were able to take a full month in August and record a full-length album. So every single day in August of 2020, we went to our buddy Joey's house here in Vista, and we spent Monday through Friday, like, 11 o'clock to 10 p.m. at night recording an album, which would not have been possible if we were all in person at work, like normal life. Like we would not have been able to do that. And for all four of us to be able to take that time to be there. Like I remember Keith was recording guitars, but had like a Zoom meeting on his laptop that his camera was off and he was muted because he wasn't needed in the meeting, but he was like supposed to be there. And I remember going like back in like the room where Joey tracks drums, like to take like a phone call and do a Zoom meeting real quick for work. But like stuff like that, like would not have been possible because we would have been there from like, 5 at night to 2 in the morning and then weekends to do it. And COVID allowed us the time to commit to doing a full length. And even now we're trying to write some new songs, but the reality of it is we don't have the time to sit down and write a full length while we're also still trying to play shows and do different stuff. And so we're probably doing like a single type of deal. And hopefully eventually it becomes an album. Right. But you look back in 2020, it's just a fascinating time to just be like, all right, we're going to take a month and go to the studio because nobody's at their job working. And then it kind of backfired in a certain way because like I said a bit ago, we weren't able to play shows off of that But it was that's kind of even how our first tour was formed, is just being online and getting into the solid state world. We met our buddies Lightworker, and then it's like, all right, we both got to get out on the road. And so through COVID, like everybody was online a little bit more, that we were able to meet all these people. And that's been one of the coolest parts for us as a band, is when we go to the other side of the country, there's all these people that we've met online through Facebook or Instagram, all these different places that we're able to meet and be like, oh, we've been chatting for like 3 years and just now meeting you for the first time. It's been pretty cool.
Was that first tour like DIY, or were you guys playing like big venues, or maybe not big venues, but venues, or like what was?
You know, it's funny. It backfired on us a little bit because it was really close to, it was the fall of 2021 and people weren't quite ready to get out yet.
Yeah.
And we unintentionally booked venues that were too big. So we played a place called like the Ritz Theater in San Jose, which was just like way too big for our show. Like should have been at a smaller bar. And so that's like some of the lessons that we learned from touring that time, is like, okay, let's like book smaller rooms. Let's like find dive bars so we can get the 20, 30, 40 people in those places and it feels like really good.
Right.
And so, yeah, most of our tours are DIY. We work with Forthright Booking. Ryan Shute is our booking agent now. So he's helping us kind of like get a little bit over the hump of DIY, but we love just like, dude, you want to put us in a dive bar in the middle of Oklahoma? Like, let's go. We'll do it. We
dive
don't
bars
care.
are great.
Yeah.
Basement,
I know, we love
basement
them.
and house shows are the best, in my opinion. Those ones are the ones that are like, people go nuts.
Well, and that's always the balance that we're trying to find, of like, one of the best shows we've ever played was a basement show in Philadelphia. Hate 5-6 was there, filmed it. It just such a cool vibe, because you're in a 7-foot ceiling, a 20 by 30 foot basement, and far too many people in there. It's like 120 degrees, but you're all kind of in this moment together. And so we're legitimately considering doing a small Southeast tour like later this year. That's just all basements and home shows. Like, do you remember a couple years ago, it might have been 2018 or 2019, that it was like Norma Jean is playing at my house. Like there was a whole tour that Norma Jean, that was all house shows.
Yeah.
And there's just something super cool about that I think I would like to do that.
it brings to memory the Chariot video where they go up on the roof. You ever see that one? The show got shut down.
I just found somebody was posting it on Instagram. Yeah, it was in Australia.
Yeah, and like the show got shut down, so they went to this dude's house and they like climbed up on the roof. So the
Josh is hanging out of the
yeah,
window.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. We just were watching that one.
Yeah, that's a wild one.
But something about that is like the unhinged kind of raw, visceral thing that we really try to bring to our performance and our recording, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, a huge bucket list for us is to just do a DIY,
that would be awesome,
only show. Yeah,
that'd be really
like
cool.
Tour.
And that's like one of those things too, that if and when you do that, the people who come out to that's going to be a very memorable thing that they'll probably never miss you guys when you come to town.
Do you know, you're from Buffalo, he goes there, Adam Beamer. Do you by chance know a guy named Adam Beamer? I know the world is massive. So.
It sounds familiar, but I'm just so far removed from like the music scene out here. So
he flew in or drove in. He's from Philly. He's from San Diego, moved to Philly, but he drives to Buffalo all the time. Like he went to the Better Lovers, like both the shows that were there. Big, tall dude, mustache. Like maybe you recognize him, but he was at our Philly show, and we're like lifetime friends because we were like in this freaking basement in Philly awesome. for a couple hours. And there's a lot of other people from that specific show that like we still chat with, like that are still engaged with us. So I totally agree. Like the smaller, more intimate shows kind of create this weird vibe where you're like, hey, we're like, we as a band appreciate you being here, and the band, the people that are there are like, hey, we're here to support you, which is really cool.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say too is the writing of a record during COVID. a friend of my singer and I, we started another band during COVID. We started jamming, just me and him, and like the week after we started jamming, COVID hit. We couldn't do anything. So we actually wrote a record not together. We never, like, everybody recorded separately, sent the files to me. I put them together. We had demos. Yeah. And then, you know, a couple months down the line, we were able to get together and practice and actually play the songs for once, like together as a band. And we were talking about it during that time of like, dude, this time frame, people are going to start releasing records that are just untouchable because they have so much time, nothing but time to work on this art that they're ready to do. And they're going to put like everything they have into it, and they're not going to rush something like that. Really. And I do believe that happened for a lot of bands. So you guys lucked out in that sense too, you know?
Yeah. Well, an interesting thing happened though, is a lot of bands like doubled up on writing. Specifically Solid State. It was Fit for a King and Devil Wears Prada, both like right before COVID hit or right around COVID, they released an album. And then because COVID shut everything down, and Silent Planet was another example of this. Like there was a lot of bands that had just released an album, and then like a little sooner than usual in the record cycle, they added another one because they were home and they were able to do that. I think you see that with movies, which the movies on one hand maybe were damaged from COVID because of the restrictions and studio, whatever nonsense you would want to say, but like. This year we got movies from Nolan and Denis Villeneuve and Scorsese. Like you had all these artists who during COVID like had a chance to write or like prep their movies, and I think we're still kind of seeing the ramifications of that in a good way. Of like,
yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I think it changed like the creative cycle. On one hand, like kind of sped it up a little bit. Like you never know like when this could happen again. Right. God forbid. Like God, I hope this never happens again, but like you just like never know when even like live music gets taken away from you, right? Which to me like changed my view on stuff. Like I try to go to the movies whenever I can. Like I got to see Dune 2 in 70 millimeter up in Orange County because we're like, hey, this is like a spectacle. Like, let's make sure to go see Dune in the theater. Because when Dune 1 was released, it was the same
HBO
day,
Max or whatever,
straight to HBO, which I did fortunately get to see Dune 1 in IMAX as well. But I know a lot of people didn't get to see that in theater. But same thing with music. I feel like because we didn't have shows for like a full year and a half, it's like, dude, these guys are coming through San Diego. Like, we got to go. We got to go, like, make sure to support. And so for us as a band, it's like made us, I don't know, I guess appreciate the fact that we can still do live music and support bands and get supported, whatever.
Absolutely. I agree. That's a good way to look at it too. I guess I didn't think about that with the movies too, you know, because there is like it was, I gotta say, like I'm a big movie guy and I have like a nice, you know, huge TV in my basement, surround sound and everything, and we have like the LED lights that track it and like project it on the thing and everything. And I was loving when movies were just coming straight to TV because I was like, I got nothing else going on, you know? Yeah. But I did miss that sense of like the big screen, like it doesn't feel as like theatrical when it's at home, you know?
There's something communal about it too. Like even going to a show, like there's a community piece to it. Like some of my favorite movie going experiences, like The Dark Knight, where we stayed in line for freaking, I don't know, 24 hours, whatever. Right. I don't even remember. But like we had to like made sure we got like good seats, the first showing at midnight. And there's something about it where you're there with like your friends. And I don't know, you see that with music. And that's like so much of our touring experience is like we try to tour with our friends so that we're like, no, like we're going to make sure that we just know that we're going to have a freaking great time. Like even if all the shows suck, if nobody comes to it, like we're still around our friends and we know we're gonna have fun. And maybe that's part of like the touring side of it too. Like we know the risk now of something not being good. And as adults in our mid-30s, late 30s, we have to like make sure it's a home run. I don't know if that makes sense, but like this has to be good.
It makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything, especially when you're trying to do the band thing as like a career, and take it serious, everything you do has to be with purpose. Even if it's like just stupid shit that you're making funny videos or whatever, like you can use that, So everything you do has to have a purpose. But so that's funny you bring that up, because I was going to ask you, what do you guys do when you're in those scenarios of, like, you mentioned before that sometimes when you try to get to the next level, you guys kind of are like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. What do you guys, is there anything you guys specifically do to kind of bring it back, to be like, all right, let's dial it back. We need to focus again. Like, let's refocus.
So much of it starts from like a tension that starts to build of like, why are we getting like grumpy and like bitter and mad at each other and passive aggressive? Like, there's certain like signs, like we're a really close band, like we're good friends and lifetime friends, and nobody I'd rather be on the road with. But then every once in a while you're like, oh, I'm feeling like a little bit of chippiness from Johnny. And it's like, oh, why is that? And it's like, either like maybe something wasn't going our way, or like we didn't get a tour, or we're trying to put together something and it fell apart. Like, like all the different stuff that happened. And it's like, oh, well, maybe we're like focusing on the wrong things. And then it's the phone call of like, hey, like we gotta have fun doing this. And we kind of have to like remind each other, like, remember we're doing this to have fun. Like we're just like a bunch of dads like hanging out with our friends and playing rock and roll. Like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like let's remember that that's what we're doing. Because I think it's what happens is we just start taking things too seriously. And it's like, okay, all right, guys, like, and it probably stems from me being like, all right, guys, here's our game plan. We're going to like do this. We're going to do this. And like, I don't know if it like takes away like the flexibility or like the nimbleness of our band of like, all right, we're going to have this like master plan. And by next year, we're going to be doing this. And we're like really goal oriented. So oftentimes when we put goals out there, we hit them. But then at the same time, it like backfires, because then we're like, we didn't hit that goal. We need to do better. Or I don't know. Like, you've been in bands before, you know how it works. But so much of it comes down to just being like, listen, we're gonna have fun. Gosh dang it.
You got to stay driven though. You still have to have those goals, because otherwise you kind of plateau and end up like my old band.
Well, no, but that's like, dude, I get it. Like at some point, like when it stops to being fun, or there's not a drive behind it, you're like kind of like, what's it all for? Like, what's the sacrifice? What's the pouring out of energy and money and stuff into this? Like, what's it for? And for us, it comes back to like, all right, let's make sure we're having fun. And like, for instance, we just hit a patch of this because we were supposed to be on a run up in the Midwest like a week or so ago, but months ago we said no to it because we were trying to kind of protect this time to make sure we were writing. And like, we're doing a run in the fall. We're doing 2 festivals in Detroit and then Chicago area. And so we're like linking those together with a run in the Midwest. So it was one of those things where like, we shouldn't hit the same markets twice within a couple months. But then we got like super bummed because our friends are out there playing shows that we're like, we should have been on that run. Like we could be playing these. And part of us was like, man, we should have just done that to like have that adventure and have fun. And so there was like a lull in our process of having fun where we were like kind of grumpy, and it was partially because we weren't on this run with Meadows and God's Eyes. So shout out to those 2 bands, awesome dudes. And we didn't get to do it because we're trying to protect our finances, but then at the same time we're like, dang it, we should have done that.
You probably made the right decision if you had that gut feeling though. I have that. I believe that like when you have those gut feelings, it's for a reason,
So I don't know. And then we're trying to get out to Furnace Fest again this year to go. We're like, they typically don't book bands 2 years in a row. So there's like a 0% chance that we'll play it this year. We played in 2023 and it was like the best weekend of our life, but we're probably just going to go out there anyways. Cause like NIV, who's from our hometown, they're playing, and just some amazing bands. If you haven't been to Furnace Fest, this is my plug. It's an amazing weekend. and super awesome in Birmingham, but we'll probably go out there. So then we just have to kind of be wise about when we're traveling and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, dude, I mean, do a tour down to there. You guys will be set. That's
what
brilliant plan.
That's what we're like trying to do. And then it's one of those things of like, whoa, the band dropped out. We just happened to be in Birmingham this
that's
weekend.
Actually that's funny because I forget who it is, but I had somebody on the podcast in past episode that said it was do you know what Fest is in Florida?
Yeah, in Florida,
so, he said that the first time they played Fest, they weren't booked for Fest. They showed up and somebody dropped and they were like, hey, we'll play.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So they threw them on, and they've been playing almost every year since. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's so sick. So
and
even
Fest
just like
is
a
really
pre-show,
fun to play.
Oh, we would love to. That's a rad looking fest. We're doing Pleasant Underground. It's called Pug Fest in Detroit. Okay. Some sick bands this year. Last year I think was the first year, and then we're doing audio feed because we got a bunch of friends doing that. So that's in like the Urbana area, a little bit south of Chicago. So I don't know. We just like. Yeah, it's kind of a mindset of like if you're willing to like make the effort, like, well, yeah, Furnace Fest, we just happen to be in the area.
Yeah. It's like back in the day, bands used to set up stages, bring their own stages outside of Warped Tour. Yeah. You remember that? Like there'd be bands in the parking lot with PAs and everything set up while people were walking in. They weren't on the tour; they just followed the tour.
Yeah. So I don't know. We have a little bit of that mindset, so we're like, all right, we're gonna figure out how to get this.
It's a good mindset to have, honestly. I do want to hear more about Furnace Fest, how you guys got on, what the experience was like.
Dude, have you had a chance to go?
No, I had some friends that went last year, but it's tough with the baby and everything now. Yep. So.
My kids are old enough now to where I can kind of start to take those like very selfish trips away from home, like not like killing my wife by leaving. Furnace Fest started for us the year before where they do a fan vote every year. They do like a one spot for one band, and we got tagged in a post in 2022. So I look on Instagram and it's like, Furnace Fest, one spot, like tag a band to get on, and somebody had tagged us. So I was like, hey, like, what if we tried to do this? And like we started getting more tags, and we ended up getting into like the final 10 of this competition. And we're like, hey, like, what if we actually got this? And we ended up not winning that one. So they did it again this year, and kind of same thing happened. Like it starts slow where you're kind of like, hey, like, oh, that's funny. Like, what if we actually did get voted onto this thing? And eventually we made it to like the final 5. And it was one of those things where we just like texted everybody like, hey, like, thank you for supporting our band. Like, we have a chance to play this festival. If you could take 30 seconds and vote for us, that would be amazing. And lo and behold, we won. It turned out to be just one of the coolest moments for us as a band because we were able to text these people back, like aunts and uncles and friends and all these different people of like, hey, we won this really cool opportunity because you voted for us. Yeah. And it was just one of those kind of bizarre votes of confidence of like, oh, there's a couple hundred people out there who are willing to take the time to vote for us as a band. So we opened up the main stage on Friday this past year at Furnace Fest, and we played on the same stage. We played right before Showbread. MXPX played on that stage later that day, and that's where Better Lovers and Becoming the Archetype, and Between the Buried and Me, Turnstile, like we played on the same stage as all those guys. And it was just one of those cool things where somebody had given us advice, like even though we had won this competition, like we won this competition, as soon as we were on the flyer, like we're a band that played Furnace Fest, and it was just a cool weekend. Like that's everybody huge. who runs the festival, all the staff, all the people that we interacted with were amazing. There's a Facebook group online too that's all Furnace Fest, and it's just a cool group of people that we've grown close to over the years because we owe so much to them, but then also we would do anything for Furnace Fest because of what it does for like the very niche scene that we're all a part of, you know?
Yeah.
like it's not like a mainstream, like no mainstream bands. Like it's all like super niche. Like, oh, you like this super subgenre of this subgenre? Like we got you.
That's awesome. What did it feel like performing in front of that many people? How many people do you think there were? Like, was it thousands of people watching?
No, we ended up playing to about 500-600 people, which is definitely the most that we've ever played to. And dude, it was cool. Like, I think there's a part of us as a performer. I don't really get butterflies too much, and so it's a little bit of like, well, like hopefully we don't mess up. Like, there's just a lot of people watching us, but also at the same time, like one of our mindsets is like, if there's 5 people, if there's 500 people, like we're just 4 dudes playing music in our garage. Like that's our mindset of like, let's give 110 and go out there regardless of what the stage is or the like situation we find ourselves in. And so that was like reassuring to kind of play through some of that in our heads as we're doing it. And then every once in a while, you're just like, dude, there's like a dude who's like 500 feet away who can hear me yelling, and like, I hope he likes my music.
That's awesome. I'm sure they
probably does it.
It's got breakdowns. I'm sure they're into it.
Yeah.
Can they dance to it? Yeah.
I got to stage dive. Like, dude, I'm kind of bummed they had a barricade the first day that was removed then on the second day. So I don't know if that was a safety thing or if they, like, maybe MXPX had it in their rider that they didn't want people close. I'm not sure. But then for Turnstile and some of those other bands, it was gone. And so I stage dove from the stage over the barricade into the crowd. And it was one of those, like, it looked sick, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I wish we didn't have the barricade so people could have been like coming up on stage and participating and stuff. So that was cool. Like, I got a video and a photo of me doing this like huge jump into the crowd. And there's just like a couple of those photos for us as like, for me as a dad, like I have these photos of me playing on this huge stage in front of a pretty large crowd that like my kids will be able to, when they're like 30, be like, hey, our dad like actually was kind of cool back in the day.
That's awesome.
And it was fun. But then for the rest of the weekend, man, we just got to hang out, and we saw Haste the Day. As Cities Burn played their last show. We saw Better Lovers. Like, just from a fan experience, like it was the coolest thing. I don't have it behind me, but in the other room I have the show flyer that's got our name on it.
That's awesome.
It's just one of those things of like,
that's one of those things you frame and
yeah,
keep forever.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Let's see, what about the tour with Meadows to Texas?
Well, so dude, it's so fun because throughout the 4-ish years that we've been a band, we've made these like oddly lifelong friends just by being on the road. And so we have like Lightworker, Fallstar, and then Meadows would be another band. Ongoing Concept, there's a couple guys that we've toured with that we've just become really close with. So when we went out to Furnace Fest, we stayed at one of the Meadows guys' house. Like, you just end up like talking to these guys on the phone, and we met those guys through another booking agent who was like, hey, you two would be a good fit together. And so, dude, we busted butt from San Diego all the way to Dallas. It's like stopped in Albuquerque for like our aunt and uncle's house for like a couple hours of sleep, and like hit the road again to make sure we were there. We hit like a snowstorm coming out of Albuquerque. Like, when you're on the road, you just like never know what to expect. But then at the end of the day, we're like, all right, we made it to Dallas. And you're like, I hope these guys are cool.
Yeah. Who's your aunt and uncle? Who's your aunt and uncle? I have an aunt and uncle in Albuquerque.
Oh, I bet they're the same person. Yeah.
I really do, though. I really do. I do really have family out in Albuquerque. When I was born, they all just got up and left. So I drove them that way, I guess. I don't know.
We call it Dutch bingo. Like, we're from a Dutch community, and you just like, if you know another Dutch person, like there's a good chance that you're somehow related. So it's like, I think that there's like an instinct that's like, yeah, who's my aunt and uncle? Like, we probably somehow. But we ended up like going to this like random dive bar in Dallas and meeting Meadows, and just through like a couple of days in Texas, you just become lifelong friends with those guys. We've toured with them again since then. We'll tour with them in the future. And it's just cool because you're just like farting around in Texas doing a weekend run in Corpus Christi, like random spots in San Angelo, like hitting like no offense to anybody from San Angelo, but hitting like no name areas that's
it's not the big market
on the corner. Yeah. And through that, you just build these like odd relationships. And so it's like one of those things where we like at a Walmart picked up a wiffle ball bat and ball. And like before the show in Oklahoma, we were playing wiffle ball and like home run derby and playing pool. Like you build up this like odd camaraderie with these people that's so hard to explain unless you've done it. It's almost like a summer camp type of thing. Like you go to like the Christian summer camp and you like have all these like best friends that you might not ever see again. But it's like, no, we shared this time where we were playing music together and doing this thing. So because of Texas, we got them to fly out to California. They did a tour with us. We up and down the coast again with Fallstar and a band called The Ongoing Concept. We learned the second time not to drive as much, so we added extra stops in there.
Smart.
And then we flew out to Birmingham and did a run around the East Coast with them last year. So we've been kind of like show swapping every couple years. And it's just cool. Like you meet these people that you kind of fall in love with and you're like, hey, we're friends now, huh?
Yeah, that's I mean the first full US tour I ever did, one of the guys in the other band that we toured with, he stood in my wedding.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you mean. We had 9 guys in one van. We did 2 bands, one van pulling a trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like they've stayed at our house, we've stayed at their house when they like come through, and it's special. Even from a creative standpoint, you're like working on a demo, so you shoot a message. You're like, hey, Stone from Meadows, hey, can you listen to this demo? Like, what are your thoughts? And he's like, oh, I love it. And you're like, oh, that's like good feedback. Like there's a song that you know the music we create, and you're kind of giving us good feedback on that. Or if he's like, I didn't like that song as much. Like Meadows is putting out an album in, I think late March. It might be out if you're listening to this now. So take a listen, but they sent me the demos of the album and said like, hey, could you rank these songs and kind of give us here's like, we'll tell you what singles we're thinking about later. But it's kind of fun to be able to give each other feedback, especially in the music industry that's so competitive, like to have these people that are advocating for you of just like, hey, I need your honest feedback. Like, do you like this as a single? Do you not? And then I don't care what they decide, but they're asking my opinion. You can kind of be like, yeah, like this wasn't my favorite song, but I can see why you guys would pick that as a single. And I don't know, there's something really cool about that.
So it was this Texas run, the run that Keith got really sick?
Yeah, well, Keith has a tattoo of his, he has a silver bullet tattooed on his leg. And so he likes his Coors Lights. And so we get to Dallas and we're about to set up our gear. And Johnny at some point was like, hey, Keith, you want a beer? And Keith was like, no, I'm not feeling good. So we're like, oh, like Keith is gonna die. Like if Keith isn't interested in drinking a beer before a show, like something is very wrong. And so we're like, hey man, like just go lay down in the van, you sleep it off or whatever you need. Like I'll come get you right before we play. And it was one of those, like the genie from Aladdin when he's like, I can't bring anybody back to life. Like Keith like crawls out of the van like the zombie, grabs his guitar and for like 30 minutes like thrashes and does his thing. And then as soon as it's over, he's like back in the van. But it was one of those of like our whole band, like you kind of know everybody's vibes and what they need. And we're always like really open. Like, hey, if you're not feeling good, like put your headphones in, like go for a walk, call whoever you need to chat, whatever it looks like. And for us, like, you're like, Keith, you want a Coors Light? And he's like, no. You're like,
something's not right.
Yeah, something's wrong. Like the vibes are not good.
Yeah.
So funny. that was a telltale for us of like, oh no, something's wrong. And that's like even Meadows. We're like, yeah, we have another guitarist. He's just not feeling good and he's in the van sleeping. So leave him alone.
That's funny. We one of the tours we did, we were in Albany and we had family friends out. Well, the first tour I ever did was with this band, and he lived out there, so we got really close with his family. They would always bring in all these bands they'd give them a place to crash, so we were super close with them. Still am. They come to Buffalo all the time. They stay at my place. We go to Bills games together, whatever, because they're Bills fans.
I love that. Yeah.
But they let us crash, and the night before we were in Syracuse, which is like, a 4-hour drive, I think, or something like that to Albany, and our singer got alcohol poisoning. And so he was sick the whole time. We get to their house, we crash, whatever. The next day we're playing a show.
Yeah.
He sleeps in the van the whole time. He gets up, he plays bass and sings. He goes nuts just like that.
Yep.
But as soon as he finishes, he walks outside, walks out to the back of the building and just projectile vomits all over the wall and then goes and sleeps in the van.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about when you're like, there's something not right here, you know?
Yeah. But you also like respect the fact that he's not feeling good. And you're like, dude, do whatever it takes to feel better. Cause we got
a show tomorrow too.
Yeah.
That's funny. And as far as the wiffle ball, is that like a common occurrence?
We typically like when we were on the East Coast, we've got a football. So we were in the Buc-ee's parking lot, like throwing football. We have baseball, like gloves. We usually try to bring some sports type of thing to pass time if we need to. I feel like in theory we would be more active, like we'd have more time to do that kind of stuff than we actually do. But for us, it's like one of those things of like, oh, let's grab the wiffle ball, or they're like $10 at Walmart. So typically if we hit a Walmart or something, we'll just grab a couple of those and then we'll leave them at somebody's house on the road. But yeah, I don't know. It's something for us that either passes the time or just like creates memories. As so stupid as that sounds, but we were like in the basement show in Philly. Now I'm thinking about it. We had a football. So we were just like throwing the football around, in Philly, like trying to like make sure we didn't hit cars and stuff, but the other bands kind of get involved and you're in this like tiny alleyway. And like, and like and it was outside of a bar in Oklahoma. There was like a dirt field behind it. And so we're like hitting wiffle balls and stuff. It's just, I don't know. There's like some monotony sometimes when you're on the road of like making sure you're here at a certain point, making sure you're like at the venue when you need to be. And so sometimes even if you can get to the venue early or whatever, you're just like, all right, let's just park our butts here. Like if you want to rest, you can. If not, you can, like, I don't know, let's go grab the wiffle ball.
Right. Yeah. No, smart. I gotta hear your take on Buc-ee's. I never had a chance to go. I stopped touring before they really became a thing. And if they were a thing, we just never crossed paths with it.
Dude, so it changed my life.
The allure of Buc-ee's, I gotta hear, because I heard about it recently with a past podcast that was released, and a new friend of mine was telling me about it, and she was just raving about it. So I gotta hear your input on Buc-ee's.
It literally changed my life. Like I can't even explain what it is about it, but it's just a huge ass gas station. But you walk in and there's like the best brisket that you've ever had, or pulled pork, or whatever it was. And I don't know, it was pretty cool. I bought like a sticker and a lanyard and a patch. Like it's just Chuck E. Cheese kind of vibe, but for truckers and people on the road.
It's kind of creepy, but amazing.
No, but at some point you're like, dude, there's no chance that this like pulled pork sandwich could be good. And you buy one and you're like, oh no, that's delicious. And so you're like, I guess I got to get another one. And it's like such a, like, Costco gas here in San Diego, like if you get gas at Costco, it's like bumper to bumper, like you got to like get in and get out. And so there's something about like going to a gas station where you're like, I guess we could like spend 4 hours here. Like,
that's awesome.
We got time.
I'm intrigued. My past guest was talking about the jerky wall. I'm intrigued about the jerky wall.
No, so same thing. They got the whole pulled pork section, and then they just have a bunch of beef jerky, all different flavors. And I think Keith, our guitarist, grabbed some, and it was delicious too. So they like it. It's a clean bathroom. It's well maintained. Like you can get food that's good. You can get a shirt. You can get something you might need on the road. Like it's like a full, like it's like a Walmart type of vibe, but it's also a gas station too. I don't know, man. Like it's it's a freaking gas station with a woodchuck beaver mascot, and somehow it's like taking over the world. So
have you guys been to Sheetz or Wawa?
Our guitarist Johnny is from Philly, he's from Pottsville, so he was like, yeah, Sheetz is fine. Like
it's better than like a Shell, you know.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I actually don't think that we hit a Sheetz when we were on the East Coast. We hit the Buc-ee's, but then I don't know. At some point, it becomes like we need to get gas, so let's get gas and keep going on the road.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, he's from Pottsville, so that was actually one of our highlights too. When we went to the East Coast, we played Philly, and then we played Cleveland the next day, and that routing allowed us to stay in Pottsville for the night. So we drove like 3 hours after our Philly show to stay with Johnny, his mom's place in Pottsville, and it was like such like a, I don't know, when you're on the road, it's like you hit this spot that's like your guitarist's mom's like childhood home, and it's like this relief of like, oh, we get to take showers and we get to like sleep in a bed, like, and for us it was staying at Sandy's house where she had like a full dinner for us at like 1 a.m, and one of the other bands stayed with us too, so it was like, oh, thank God we made it to Sandy's house.
There's few things sweeter than getting to somebody's home and being able to take a shower after not having one for a week, and you sweat your ass off every night. You know, we actually started traveling at one point with like a camp shower bag, where it's like this plastic bag that you fill, and it's got a small like a quarter-size nozzle, and we would we'd go into Walmart because we'd sleep in the parking lots all the time. We'd go into Walmart and, you know, you fill the bag and then you walk out with it, whatever. Well, at a certain point while we were touring, we started coming across these Walmarts that like updated their bathrooms. So you had to keep waving your hand under, and it would be on for like 3 seconds. So we had a 4-gallon bag that would take an hour and a half to fill, but we still did it because we were like, we got to do something, you know?
Yeah.
But that feeling of like crashing at someone's house, even if it's on the floor, you're like, it just feels so much more homely than the van.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. Tell us about the friend tour with Meadows and Concept and Fallstar.
That was another one that got put together because we had met Fallstar. Fallstar is a band that played a lot in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and same with Concept. So we had kind of gotten both those guys. Fallstar had started playing music again, so we had done a run with them late 2021. And they convinced Ongoing Concept to kind of get back together out of their hiatus. They were starting to make music again. And we had convinced Meadows to come out to the West Coast. And so that was like the ultimate, like 4 bands that are all friends. And again, I think at some point it becomes a little bit of like a broken record, but so much of it is important to us that we're having fun and surrounded by people that we're like enjoying at that point, especially when you have a tour package that are friends like that, like all DIY, smaller venues, we can backline, we're all using each other's gear. Like you kind of have like a respect for each other, knowing that like so-and-so is not going to break the drum set or the guitars or whatever that is. And so that was that started in San Diego. We played San Diego, San Francisco, Medford, Oregon, Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Seattle, Portland. I think that run kind of went up the coast and went down and around. And it was just one of those spots where like every single one of those shows was pretty cool, except for the San Francisco one. That show was a bust, but that's fine. But Spokane, like from Medford to Boise, we had to drive through a snowstorm, and then we had to make sure to like leave Boise at a certain time so we could get to Spokane. And so there was just one of those things too, when you get on the road, you realize like, all right, we're in this together, so let's make sure like everybody gets to the next location safely. And I don't know. It's fun. And that again, those 4 bands, and then another one like I said, Lightworker. There's a group of people that like I'm just willing to be like, hey, we just got a test mix on a song today actually, and so it's like one of those things where I'm going to send that out to those guys to be like, hey, here's a test mix that I think we're probably going with. Like, you guys have any feedback? You like this? What, like, you feel like this embodies like our sound that we play with live? And so that's one of those things where so much you can become so insulated as a band, especially with us. And like, there's 4 of us, we like really are like fine tune on our specific vision. And then you bring other people in, and even just like a little note here and there, which I wouldn't want like too much, but every once in a while, just like a little note or a little like, oh, I don't know, whatever the comment would be. You're like, oh, that might help our creative process in the future.
It's a good way to look at it too, is like, they are your fans too. Like, they're your friends, but they're fans of your music. So they like, they can give you that input of like what they're longing for in your music.
Yeah.
Because if you guys came out with a pop song, they're like, "What the hell is this?" You know, like,
well,
we're looking for this. What's going on? You know?
Yeah, that's an interesting. That's happening with some friends of ours where maybe the songs I got some demos and I need to be like, hey, I think that you guys should be heavier than this, but I didn't really think about it that way. But yeah,
I mean, I get it. Like some bands make that they kind of take that whole, you know, that 180 turn, you know, like Polar Bear Club. They used to have their singer had like a real raspy voice, and it affected his vocal cords to where their last record they released, he sang clean, and it's amazing. That's like one of my favorite records, but it did the worst. It did the worst, and then they ended up breaking up. So it's just not what people are used to, but it's like, maybe that's the direction the band's going. You just don't know, you know? So I just have a few questions here before we end the podcast. But so what do your kids think of this? Like, have they seen you performed? Are they like, my dad's a rock star, you know?
I have a lot of videos of my kids like covering their ears when I'm like playing my music for them or something. But the truth is, I actually think that, man, I love that question because it's not like an ego thing. It's not like a pretentious thing, but I think my kids love it that their dad is in a band. And more than anything else, I would want my kids to see, like, just because I'm a dad, just because I have a career, like I still pursue something that means a lot to me. And it's like one of those things where like I'm going to pursue this thing that creatively, that personally, that feeds me up. And then truthfully, when I'm like fed creatively through this band, like I can be a better dad. I'm not resentful of my kids because I had kids and I had to stop playing music. So there's like a whole line of thinking with that where it's like, hey, like I'm going to be the best dad I can be for you guys. But at the same point, like I'm going to go out there and kind of pursue something that's very meaningful to me. And then I would want them to be able to look at what I do when they're teenagers or adults and be like, hey, that was inspiring to me that I got to watch my dad do this thing. And so I'm going to do that same thing. Now, the coolest thing that's happened recently is they got into YouTubers like Mr. Beast and Unspeakable and like all these like hip new YouTubers. They found out that the Undertaking has a YouTube. So to my kids, I'm a YouTuber. And they thought that was like the coolest thing. And so one of our first music videos, I had put Henry in it because it's like a stop motion where I like colored on paper and I like made the video kind of look like he was the one doing it. So the middle child, Jack, is so mad at me that he's never been in one of our music videos because Henry's on YouTube, but Jack's not on YouTube. And then like a funny band nuance is they think it's so cool that I have a merch store because all these YouTubers they follow have merch stores online. And they found out that like, being in a band, like having like buckets full of merch is like not cool. But in our garage, I have this like area of merch and they're like, I was like, I gotta go pack up some merch. And they're like, you sold merch? Like they clicked in their brain in the past year that we have a YouTube channel and we have a merch store. And they're like, that's so cool.
Hear me out. Music video idea. Have the kids perform as you and just have them switch in and out and their best impression, of their dad performing. There you go. Then they're all in it and there's nothing to complain about.
That's true. So I have a couple videos of them like pretending to yell and stuff like me. We don't have a ton of all age venues here in San Diego, but we have a show coming up in April that's just at our screen printer, our merch screen printer. We're throwing like a show in her warehouse. And so that's all ages. So I'm going to get the kids probably to come to that one. So one of my kids has come before, but the other two, there's two of them that still haven't seen us. But Johnny has two kids. Keith has a kid and another one on the way. So it kind of trickles down with everybody in the band of being like, hey, like being parents is really important to us, but then also finding our autonomy of not just like giving up everything to
you're not just a parent.
Be parents. Yeah.
That's great.
That's kind of a soapbox for my wife and I of making sure that you're like fulfilling your own individuality within marriage, just to make sure that you're not like resentful of the partner who's like, I don't know, especially it's maybe seems like men are like, oh, I'm going to go golf and I'm going to go to do whatever I want. And then like the wife stays home. And just to make sure that like everybody's happy, and then I feel like through that your marriage might be better. I don't know. We're getting into like therapy stuff.
That's where I'm at right now with my wife.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
You know, because we've just been so like locked in with the baby.
Yeah.
She's still so young, so it's like we have to remind ourselves we're not just parents. We still have to be able to like this is my golf. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, finding the time
totally.
to do this is my going and golfing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially because I don't really have the music thing going on as much anymore.
Yeah. Well, like my wife plays soccer. She tore her ACL last year, but it was one of those things like she would get into a season where she wasn't playing soccer. And I'd be like, hey, you got to make sure you're playing soccer. Like that's like a good outlet for you. And so tonight we're recording this on a Tuesday night. Like technically Tuesday night's her night to get out because Monday night's band night. So it's either we're getting together and practicing if we have a show coming up, or we're writing, or we're just watching movies and like hanging out. But then Tuesday, because I have Monday, Tuesday is the day that Kylie will go out and kind of go get dinner or go exercise, whatever it looks like for her. She has like carte blanche to do whatever. And because of that, like we both kind of have that one night of the week that you go out and you kind of like don't have to put the kids to bed. You're off the hook for that night. And for us, that's something that works like that's really well.
Healthy.
And that,
healthy.
Well, selfishly then like she gets to go on her trips and do stuff. And then I get to go on tour and, do stuff as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. I love to hear that. Any near-death experiences, anything like that? Or have you saved any lives or any? You didn't pull anybody out of a burning vehicle or anything?
Shout out to Sam, I believe. Sam from Seattle. He was having a low blood sugar situation. He's diabetic, and he came up to our merch booth, and we've become friends with him now, but he like wasn't feeling good. And I was like, hey man, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And it was like one of those, like, we're chatting with him for a little bit. And I'm I have, my uncle is diabetic. So you kind of like know. And I'm like, hey, Eric, like, do we have any snacks? And we ended up helping him like sit down at our merch booth and like got him snacks. And then afterwards, like the next day, he like writes like, hey, shout out to the Undertaking for like seeing that like I wasn't feeling good.
That's awesome.
We've had a couple situations like that where it happened another time, and I'm drawing a blank on what it was. And it was a fight in Corpus Christi, of all places. Some dude, and we had talked to him before the show. He was from San Diego. Found out that we were from San Diego, so we were calling him San Diego at night. But one of the local bands, the bassist started moshing, put his bass down, and started moshing in the crowd and hit this guy's girlfriend. So homie just like punches the crap out of the bassist. So this fist fight starts, and I don't know if it's just my personality, but at some point I kind of hop in there and I'm like, yo, San Diego, come outside with me. And like the Meadows boys were like, Austin's going outside with the guy that just started the fight. Like he's going to die. But it was one of those things where I was like, no, I just need to get this guy like out of the venue, get tempers to like calm down. But it happened a couple different times where we like kept finding ourselves getting involved in these situations. And I'm like, can we just have like a normal night?
Yeah. That's the thing though, when you're in a heavy band like that, kids are, when you're, throwing down or what, two-stepping or whatever, people are bound to get hit, and some people just, they don't like it. I got two more questions for you real quick.
Yeah.
Is there like a favorite record you got to bump every time you drive on the road, when you're touring?
Dude, we were jamming like a son of a gun to the freaking Tarzan soundtrack.
Love that.
Phil Collins.
He did not need to go that hard.
No.
He did not need to go that hard.
So that became a whole bit for us that we just like kept playing that on repeat. If I'm toxic quality for me is I listen to full albums. And so I did a stretch from Oklahoma to Albuquerque. I think it was like 10 straight hours where I was like in the zone of driving, and everybody's like, you good? And I'm like, I'm good to go. And I listened to the entire discography of Every Time I Die from like beginning. And I was like, I'm not going to stop driving until I get through. I can't remember if Radical was out at the time, but it was like, I'm going to listen to every single thing. And like everybody else in the van is like, oh my God, I can't listen to these guys anymore. But you're like, I'm driving. I don't care what anybody else has to say.
Yeah.
And then we've done it too before, like the overnight drives, like everybody else is trying to sleep, but we're in like the front seat, like listening to like Eminem Eminem and all this like rap music, Dr. Dre and stuff. And we're like having like a party up in the front while everybody's trying to sleep. But it's so important as the driver that you're like locked in and focused.
You have to. Yeah. I would find myself listening to stuff that I listened to like in middle school and stuff.
Sure.
And just like singing at the top of my lungs because what else are you going to do to keep you awake when you're driving through Iowa at 12 o'clock at night and there's not a single light, within 50 miles, whatever.
Yeah. That's funny.
And lastly, so what's in the future for the band?
Yeah. If this is coming out in April, we have a run in the summer. Coming out, we're working with Forthright Booking, so our buddy Ryan's helping us put that together. But we'll be in the Ohio area, we'll be in Pennsylvania a little bit, we'll be in Chicago and Detroit, Michigan, hopefully Grand Rapids. So we'll be kind of floating around in there in the summer. And then we're still trying to make some plans for the fall and kind of solidify what we're doing. But we did just get a test mix on one of our songs, so we're working with our buddy Fluff. Who used to be in a band called Dragged Under, but he's doing the mixes for us. And that should hopefully be coming out in April, in May, maybe June, kind of right before that run. And it's a song we're calling And the Silver Surfer. So we're going to kind of run with the Undertaking and the Silver Surfer.
That's amazing.
And we're kind of playing around with like the themes of it, because somehow in comic lore, we've like romanticized the Silver Surfer, but anytime he would show up, it meant that your planet was going to be destroyed by Galactus. So there's like a eeriness and like a bad sign that the Silver Surfer is showing up. So we're kind of playing around with like the first song of this next batch of songs that we have is like maybe not a good thing, like there's some doom coming. So we're stoked to kind of we like being creative, and we'll film some music videos. I think we have some fun concepts with some like found footage. Like again, I've put my foot in my mouth by saying this, but we might be trying to do like a little mini horror movie with every single one of our music videos.
That's awesome.
A little bit of like a Black Mirror, but like Batman Beyond. I don't know if you watch that. So we're like heavily influenced by comics and pop culture stuff, but like every Batman Beyond episode was like very cynical, and like everyone would end on like a little stinger that was like, oh, the bad guy might not be gone, or like kind of stuff like that. So instead of doing like full just cool band playthroughs, we might be doing like little horror movies with stuff. I don't know. We kind of start with a high bar for creative stuff, and then probably lower it by the end. But at least we're gonna like try to go for something.
The
cool.
idea's
So,
there.
I don't know.
Thoughts there.
Yeah.
Austin, we did it. This is it. This is the end of the podcast. I appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun. If there's anything else you'd like to promote, social media, where can everybody find you? Anything like that? Now would be the time.
Yeah, we're on Instagram at the Undertaking Rocks. Spotify, if you listen to our music and you dig it, make sure you follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Instagram. That's kind of the best way to keep up to date. We're like semi-active on Twitter, but like it's dying, so I don't even know if it's like worth going over there. So.
Totally agree.
Snag some merch. We always work with our buddy Dave Quiggle, so we have some cool Quiggle merch. If you're a fan of like the old school Face Down Records stuff. And yeah, buy some merch, come do a show if we're in your area. But yeah, thanks for having us on, man. I love just taking the time to talk about music, and I could talk about our band and our creative process and all this nonsense for hours. So if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you rate and review 4 stars on iTunes or whatever.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. Everybody, thank you for sticking around. Make sure you let us know what you think of the episode. Give the guys a follow. Everything they've got going on, all their links and everything will be down below. Make sure you pick up some merch from them. Keep an eye out for new music. Check out the music they just released with the 8-bit, 007 stuff they just did. Like and subscribe. Share with a friend, a family member. Anything helps. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Just a thing I fixate on. Not a dream, but